If there's one thing tons of people, men and women, want to avoid when it comes to dating and relationships, is getting played. And the unfortunate fact is, or unfortunate reality is that so many people have been there, have already been put through some nonsense, you know what I'm saying? And they're carrying a lot of hurt from those experiences. And because of that, they don't know how to move forward and navigate through new potential relationships. Now, I don't want the answer to be, well, I'm just going to swear off all women or swear off love, you know what I'm saying, because I've been hurt before. No, I want you to heal. I want you to learn. I want you to grow, because for most of you, if not all of you, deep down inside, you do desire a relationship, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good and beautiful thing. So we need to get you on a positive path and understand what to better look for, because the reality is that you can have a great relationship out with a great woman, but you have to be mindful of what are some warning signs that either she's trying to play you or that sets you up to get played. Okay? So let's get to the first one on the list, and that is, don't spend more money than you're willing to lose. So one of the things that men truly value is, well, two things: time and money. Okay? But honestly, when I hear men talk about getting played or going through a situation with a woman where they feel they were used, almost 9 times out of 10, it involves them investing a level of finances into that woman or into that situation. And it's normal because, hey, let's be real, women are looking for men who have financial stability. Men typically use money as a ways to impress a woman, whether that's be spending money on a nice date, whether that be helping her out in some kind of ways, buying her stuff, or just even investing money in trying to make time to be available, driving to her spot or driving her places, whatever the case may be, right? And let me make clear, there's nothing wrong with spending some money. All right. I know there's some dudes out there that's going to be like, nah, don't spend a dime on these women. Listen, we got to be reasonable. There's nothing wrong with it. The problem is when you are crossing a line that is either putting you in a bad position or putting you in a position where if things don't work out, you're going to regret spending that money. That's the problem. So to put it in perspective, listen, everyone's at different financial levels right now. And a guy who may be making, just let's just say really good money. I don't want to put a specific number on it, but good money to where he has a good amount of disposable income. Well, spending $100 on a date for him may not be a big deal. And if the date doesn't work out, he may not feel some kind of way about it, right? So for him, spending that much is okay. But for the next guy who maybe is living check to check, who is still struggling right now, and we could discuss that, well, that guy maybe shouldn't even be trying to date, but sometimes life happens. You meet a woman when you least expect it. So I don't want you to say, well, I'm not going to date her because I'm not at the tip-top financial position I want to be at. But either way, that $100 to that guy is going to hurt a lot more. You know what I'm saying? It's going to have a greater impact on him, especially when if things do not work out. So that man now has to reassess what is he willing to spend. So every individual man has to be honest with themselves about, okay, what do I not mind investing to the point where if it doesn't work out, I'm cool. I'm cool with it. Now, one of the ways to help you minimize the financial investment, okay, is to get more creative with the dates. You don't have to go to an expensive date. Now, let me make clear. You may hear some women who say, well, an expensive date is unacceptable. Coffee date, ice cream date, a date at the museum, that's not going to work. 9 times out of 10, she's saying that's not going to work because she doesn't like you like that to begin with. She's not interested enough to value just the opportunity to spend time and see if this can go somewhere. And so she's convinced herself to go on the date based off of what she can get out of you. All right. But I've yet to meet a woman, and again, I never want to say never, but it's rare for me to come across a woman who's really excited about going on a date with a guy, who really is interested genuinely in this guy, and she's stressing over the type of date. She's more focused on the quality of the date. And again, quality from the standpoint of you guys enjoying talking to each other, having fun, learning about each other, rather than what you spent on it. So don't stress yourself over, I have to spend X amount of dollars. No, be real with yourself. Also, you want to make sure you're setting the proper expectation of what kind of man you are, what kind of life you want to live. I don't want you taking her to no 5-star restaurant when you're not that kind of guy. And again, I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way. I'm saying, like, if you're a simpler guy, you like the simple things, you're not into all this fancy stuff, you like a more frugal lifestyle, well, I'd rather you present that day one so she knows exactly what she's getting herself into, rather than essentially tricking her into thinking you're all about spending all this money when that's not really who you are and you can't sustain that. All right? So get more creative with the dates. There are plenty ways to simplify dates. Also, let me say, going on dates during the day are typically going to be less expensive than at night. Going to a dinner at night is typically going to cost more than taking her out to lunch. All right? Typically. Of course, it can still be as expensive at times, but you'll have an easier time finding inexpensive options. So consider that. But the point is, if you want to avoid getting played, take an inventory of what you are okay and comfortable with spending, and do not cross that line. And if not crossing that line means you don't get to go on another date with that woman, let her go. She ain't for you anyway. And real quick, before I move on to the next point, my videographer brought up a good point to tell you guys. Don't make promises you can't keep. Don't claim, yeah, I'm going to take you here, take you there, do this for you, and then you can't hold up your end of the bargain. All right? So be careful of putting your foot in your mouth and promising and presenting things that you can't live up to. All right? Be real about what you can do or what you're willing to do in regards to dating and taking her out. Now, that perfectly brings me to point number 2. The second way to avoid getting played by a woman is to be honest about your needs and your concerns. All right? So the fact is, a lot of men, when they go on date with women that they like and are trying to make things happen with, tend to hold back speaking on any issues or even saying what they really want. Now, let's start with speaking out on issues. As a man, you may, in the process of dating this woman, recognize some red flags. But not all red flags come off as glaring, strong red flags. Sometimes they're subtle, and they're subtle enough to where you can convince yourself to overlook it. It's not a big deal. I'm not going to sweat it. You know what I'm saying? But the real reason why you're doing that, or the deeper reason why, is because you really like her. You really want this to work out. You don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to give yourself a reason to not pursue, and you don't want to throw anything at her that might offend her, bother her, or whatever. The problem is, the same red flag you ignore in the beginning is the same red flag that ends the relationship. And if she is a woman who is either setting out to play you, or even just not a woman who's into you enough. So a lot of times, a woman may get with you, not with the intentions to play you and use you. She's trying to convince herself that she can make this work with you. But if she's not really into you like that, it can very well end up at some point where now she's using you and playing you. Okay? I'll have to make a whole different video on breaking that whole thing down. But I just want you to understand that by not addressing the concerns early, you don't give yourself a chance to expose and see more clearly, is this a woman I can build something with? Is this a woman I can truly move forward into a healthy relationship with? You allow her to ignore her issues and her red flags because you're not willing to call it out. Now, let me make something very clear. I keep saying make something very clear, but anyways, understand that when I say call her out, and I feel the need to say this, all right? I know a lot of y'all are consuming content on YouTube and the internet in general where you're seeing men more aggressively call women out and quote unquote try to hold them accountable. Listen, that's not an effective tool if you're hoping for a potential relationship, all right? You gotta understand the energy that you come with it can make someone become very defensive. A lot of women naturally can be very sensitive to your criticism. And more specifically, when they're emotionally invested and attracted to you, they're gonna be more sensitive to what you have to say. They would be less bothered by a dude they're not actually interested in saying something. But a guy they actually like is gonna hit them harder, okay? So if you come at her all hard and unnecessarily aggressive, you're setting the stage for a battle. You're setting the stage for her to now become uncomfortable, insecure, when it doesn't need to go that way. So you can address a woman and call her out, but in a more calm, loving manner, in a manner that says, all right, it doesn't mean you're going to tolerate any nonsense, but you're speaking to her in a way that she can receive what you're saying. All right. So you have to be mindful of your delivery. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And some of you as men may think, well, we shouldn't have to worry about all that. If you want a healthy relationship with any woman, you're going to have to learn. All right. And a great way to look at it, especially for those of you who either have kids or desire to have kids, even with your children, you're going to have to learn how to deliver your message at times in a way that doesn't make them feel like they're being attacked, but that you're trying to talk to them and connect with them in a way that they can now receive what you're saying. So it's a good skill to learn regardless, and it will be beneficial for you in relationships, in parenting, in business, you name it, it's going to be useful. But anyways, the fear of calling her out needs to be put away because you got to do it. But also not just calling out the concerns, but expressing your desires. Again, a lot of men hold back expressing what they really need from that woman because you're just trying to move this thing along and you're hoping she's going to stick around and she likes you. So you don't want to put too much, or you don't want to say anything that maybe you told a previous woman and they reacted poorly to it. So now you're like, nah, I'm not going to say nothing to her about it. You may fear that she's going to reject you. She's going to lash out. It won't be a pleasant reaction. All right. But again, that's shooting yourself in the foot. Because you need to see, can she tap into your needs and desires? Is she on the same page as you? If not, again, even if it's not she's trying to play you or will play you, it's a situation where you will feel cheated, where you will feel devalued, disregarded, and you will feel like, there'll be a void created because you're not making clear to her what you need, and you didn't allow yourself to discover as early as possible if she can meet those needs. So be willing to discuss these things early as possible. All right, so let's move on to number 3. And I've kind of already said it, but I'll just reiterate it real quick. And the third thing you need to do to avoid getting played by a woman is addressing all the red flags. So we've kind of highlighted in the first 2 points, so I'll make this one quick. Again, when you see there's an issue, and let me make clear, one, red flags aren't you see it and you run. Red flags are you see it, you address it. If it cannot be corrected, then you run. And not even run, you walk away, you let them go. Because sometimes the red flag is a misunderstanding. All right. Sometimes just communicating the issue and they will fix it. I have tons of stories and examples where men were ready to cut a woman off because they feel like, she did this, she doesn't get it, whatever. And I was like, nah, just talk to her. They talked to her. She's like, all right, cool. And literally immediately fixed the problem. All right. And they were able to, they didn't have any reoccurring issues from that specific thing they discussed. So give that person an opportunity to show you if they're willing to make necessary corrections. But also understand that red flags aren't just the big things that everyone else talks about. Red flags are anything that doesn't sit well with you. Anything that makes you uncomfortable. Anything that will make it difficult for you to show up the way that you need to as a man in this relationship. All right? So even if someone else says, well, that's not a big deal. It's not about how they feel, bruh. It's about how you feel. Okay? And how it impacts you. Now, yes, sometimes in addressing that red flag in that woman, you may come to realize this is really about something deeper within you that needs to be addressed. And as a man, I want to encourage you to not run from that, to not dismiss that. You've got to be real with yourself. And it's like, well, dang, maybe I am reacting real negatively when she says things to me. Maybe I am being a bit insecure, not because of what she's doing, but because of what I've been through with other women. You know what I'm saying? Maybe I don't feel respected enough, not because of what she's doing, but because I am not confident in myself and my standing as a man in this world right now. All right? And I'm just giving a couple examples of what could be going on within you that's creating or contributing to conflict. So not only be willing to address her red flags, but be willing to accept any red flags within yourself. All right? And that will help you, because understand, by healing from those things, one, you will highly increase your chances of nobody playing you. Because once you get back to your true self, when we don't heal, we are separated from our true selves. We also don't see things as clearly. We react and process out of hurt. All right. And that's not a good place to be. But when we heal, everything gets clearer. Everything. And everything gets better. So look into that. I do have a book real quick, Love After Heartbreak. Check it out. I'll put the link in the description or in the comment section. It will give you the steps to healing. It's a book for men and women. All right. So check it out. But definitely as a man, be willing to heal, but definitely address the red flags that you see in her. All right. So now we are at the fourth thing to do to avoid getting played by a woman. And that is, do not be afraid to lose her. Now, I usually would leave this to the very end, but I felt like I had to put this in the middle because sometimes people don't make it to the very end of the video. So I was like, let me catch y'all before y'all walk away for any reason or get distracted. Listen, the fear of losing the woman is the biggest issue that men struggle with, that leads to them getting played, that leads to them getting hurt, that leads to them allowing a woman to stay in their life that should have been gone a long time ago, that leads to them losing their masculine energy and being more in their feminine, or being just away from their masculine in a way that it makes them less attractive to that woman. So much goes wrong because of the fear of losing her. And to make it simpler, because you are operating out of fear. As a man, you cannot operate out of fear, especially in a relationship. And even when you don't think you're showing it, if that's what's going on within you, it's going to come out of you one way or another. Some have survived that. Many have suffered for it. Okay? And you got to get to the root of, why am I so afraid to lose her? Am I afraid to lose her because I've already invested so much? Am I afraid to lose her because I don't want to be by myself? Am I afraid to lose her because, you become so infatuated and you're hanging on to the potential that you see in this woman, but not the reality of who she is? It could be you're holding on because you do love her, but even if you do truly love her and you truly feel confident that this can be something special, you can't let fear be your guide. All right? Because that's when you start overlooking red flags. That's when you start mishandling the situation. That's when you start reacting poorly to moments and little situations that occur in that dating or in that relationship with that woman. So again, it goes back to healing to kind of help get rid of that fear. And you've got to get to a place of understanding, listen, I'm going to do what I need to do as a man. I'm going to put my best foot forward. I'm going to be willing to communicate. I'm going to be willing to address issues. I'm going to be willing to hold myself accountable, right? I'm going to do my best. But if my best is still not good enough for this woman, I have to be okay with letting her go. Plain and simple. Now, does that automatically mean she isn't the woman for you? Some women are not at a healthy enough place emotionally to be with you. Okay? And so in this moment, they cannot handle this for various reasons. Mainly, they have not healed. And so walking away from her, being okay with letting her go, doesn't mean this can't work out later. But you cannot tolerate unhealthiness. You cannot tolerate an unwillingness to correct things and make things better, an unwillingness to respect and value you and what you are providing her and pouring into her in this relationship. You cannot tolerate those things, because now if you do that, you will start to lose her respect in time. All right. It may not be right away, but over time, because if you don't see your value, how will she? All right. So you've got to respect yourself enough to say, okay, it's one thing to give someone a chance who is working towards better, but just struggling, versus someone who doesn't even want to do the work. All right. So recognize the difference between those two things. But again, get out of that fear of losing her. Understand that if either this can work out later, or she's just not the one for you. And if she's not the one for you, because sometimes in this what some may say a scarcity mindset, thinking I won't find anything this good again, you're tricking yourself into thinking that I have to hold on to this because there's nothing better. But if it doesn't work with her, trust there is better. It's either going to be a better version of her coming back later, or someone else who's better for you. All right, so let's keep this moving. So another way to avoid getting played is to never be afraid to ask questions. Now, this is slightly different than the whole addressing red flags and expressing your needs and your concerns. This is just, don't be afraid to dig deeper. Don't be afraid that when you see something that you're curious about, to ask what's up here, what's going on there, however you're feeling. It is an extension of being willing to communicate more, being more transparent, being more vulnerable in the sense of when something is bothering you, saying, yo, why did you do this? Or what's up here? And here's the reason why this is so crucial when it comes to when we're trying to avoid getting played. The person who is going to play you is trying to avoid these types of questions and conversations. Because the more you get someone to speak, the more they will expose themselves. No one, even though women are some amazing liars, and I say not amazing to praise it, I'm just saying some of them are really good at it, really freaking good. If you get someone speaking long enough, they will start to show cracks. They will start to expose themselves. It is very hard for anyone to just consistently lie if you can keep the conversation going. And you can't do that if you're unwilling to ask questions. When you ask this and it doesn't make sense, then keep asking. Ask another. And if she gets upset at you, again, don't take that as, oh, well, okay, I don't want to cause any problems. I don't want to make her mad. Let me stop. No, she should be willing to answer any questions you have. Now, respectfully, you've got to be willing to do the same for her. Meaning, when she's asking you questions, you got to be willing to answer. You can't be running from it and then you expect her to be upfront with you and answer what you got to ask. No, let's give what we expect to receive in return. All right. So be that man who's always willing to answer her questions. And then don't be the man who's afraid to then ask the questions that he has. All right. So now here is the next number 6 on the list of what you can do to avoid getting played by a woman is set a deadline and be intentional. So, you know, the typical story when you hear people talk about their dating experiences, especially from a woman, typically includes the man being the one who's kind of let's go with the flow. Let's just, let's not put any labels on this, things of that nature. But for many of you guys who are genuinely and seriously looking for a relationship, that's not what you're on. You're on trying to make something really happen. And so now you may be the one that comes across the woman who's now kind of, let's just see where this goes, boom, 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 whatever the case may be. And the problem is this. I'm not saying there's never been someone who maybe they just were afraid to put too much structure on because they've been burned before, which still speaks to an issue that needs to be addressed, but they weren't doing it to play you. But when you allow vagueness to be implemented into this dating process, you allow the person who would try to play you or is trying to play you to have a greater chance of playing you. All right? Vagueness is just a great setup to just string you along and use you for as long as possible. So I've seen many situations where the man really into the woman wants some committed relationship, wants to take it to the next level, and it's the woman stringing him along. I need more time. I'm not ready. Boom, 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 boom. But while she's not ready and needs more time, still expecting you to show up 100% in this process. Still expecting you to take her out. And I'm not gonna lie to y'all, in some of these situations, paying for certain bills, giving her money for this, giving her all these benefits, even though she is unwilling to either fully commit as well as truly give you the benefits you need in return. Because it's one thing if you're saying to me, all right, she doesn't know what she wants to do yet, but she's essentially matching your energy. You're pouring into her, she's pouring into you. Then there's a greater argument to make that we can be a little bit more patient with that one, right? But let's be real. And as a man, you got to be real with yourself. A lot of y'all, when y'all been played before, or you've seen your friends get played, what you saw was a lopsided relationship or a lopsided dating process where the dude was doing a lot for that woman, but that woman was not doing a lot for that man. All right? Plain and simple. So you've got to set a deadline in the sense of, listen, we don't need forever to figure out if we want to be with each other or not. All right? At some point, we got to say, listen, and I'm just throwing out an example. What your deadline will be is up to you. But let's just say you are intentionally dating as a man. You are looking for something serious. If you say, all right, I'm going to give it 6 months of me giving proper communication. And again, I'm not saying 6 months should be your timeline. For some, it might be 3 months. For some, it might be long. It depends on you. You got to be real about what you're truly okay with and comfortable with. But let's just go with the 6 months for a second. You're going to show up. You're going to be intentional. You're going to focus on, growing with this woman and seeing if we're on the same page and learning each other and all these things. But after 6 months, she's still talking about she doesn't know what she wants to do. She's not sure. She still wants to date other people. All right, then you got to be strong and say, okay, you know what? You go your way, I'm going to go mine. Now, to me, some may not like this advice, but I think there's nothing wrong with saying to that woman, if you change your mind and you want to be serious, come holler at me. And if I'm in a place where I'm willing to accept that, cool. Well, we can discuss that at that time. It doesn't mean you're guaranteeing she's going to walk back into your life and everything's going to be great. It's just saying, all right, cool. If that comes about, we can possibly explore it. But until then, go in your corner, I'm going to mine. Rather than continuously pouring in when you don't know where this is going. And again, tons of men have gotten themselves played, continuously pouring in, only to see that woman end up with some other man. All right? Only to spend all this money and all this investment to this woman and not get no return on it. So be intentional, set that deadline, and be strong. And let me add this before I move on to the next point. You got to be honest with yourself about what's that line that if I cross, I get too attached that I don't know how to let go. Again, I think as men, we don't always talk about the struggles that some men have because men don't want to be viewed as weak and soft and all these things. But the reality is that many men have gotten caught up in their infatuation, what they may feel is love, in that attachment. and they don't know how to let go after a certain point. You have to recognize what that breaking point is for you and make your deadline before that breaking point. All right. Whether it's a time thing, whether it's an investment thing, hell, for some of y'all, it might be a sexual thing. Whatever it is, recognize it and say, I'm drawing the line before that point so that I don't find myself in a situation that now I don't know how to get out of this. All right, and that brings me to the last thing you can do as a man to avoid getting played by a woman. I mentioned it earlier, but again, I'm just going to reiterate this point, and that is heal from your past. It is very hard to see things as clearly as you need to when you're holding on to past trauma and hurt. And the reality is that I think everyone in this world, I never want to say 100% everyone, but I think the vast majority of people in this world have experienced hurt. And the unfortunate reality is that the majority of people don't heal from it. And this is why we're seeing so much dysfunction. This is why so many relationships are failing, marriages are failing, people ending up with the wrong person. All of these things are symptoms of a lack of healing. So if you want to set yourself up for success as a man and being able to choose the right woman, because so many men don't listen, a lot of dudes give y'all horror stories of what these women are capable of. But what they're leaving out is how they poorly selected this woman, how they overlooked certain things, how they allowed their lack of healing to blind them and set them up for failure. You won't have to be a victim. If you learn how to heal and release those things you've gone through, learn from it and grow, you will become a better man, a wiser man, a stronger man, a happier man. And you will be able to receive a relationship that is truly best for you. Hey, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to check this one out right here, and I'll see you there. So here's one of the mistakes that a lot of men make. They tend to sometimes only focus on what's happening with them and that woman specifically. Now, granted,